Hello and welcome back. In this lecture, we're going to learn about Azure Application Gateway demonstration. Application Gateway, which will be useful for the web traffic load balancer that will definitely enable you to manage traffic on your web applications. So very similar to your traditional load balancer, but it works on layer 7. That's a major difference. So if you have not gone through the application gateway overview lecture, please go through that lecture and then come back to this lecture where we are gonna learn within this lecture about configuration of the application gateway. So what we're gonna try to accomplish within this lecture is we will have a pool called backend pool. So there are two different pools we will create. One is a default, other one would be the backend. So within the default you have a normal application server, which is in this case let's say VM01, and for backend pool other one would be I will name it as a video server pool example. So this will have the VM02. So this VM02 will have the video files. So as an end user, if I try to browse, this request goes to my application gateway. So application gateway, what it does is it actually checks if you as the end user try to browse as a counterstore.com example, it will simply there's no custom routing path defined because it's just the straightforward your FQDN or your domain name. So it just simply goes to the VM01. Whereas if you just go like counterstore.com/videos, then it actually directs to, with the help of application gateway, to this VM02, which is a part of backend server pool. So that's what we're going to achieve this. So to create this entire scenario, I have to create few of the VMs as we talk, like VM01 and VM02. Also, I need to configure my application gateway. So these are the things are involved, or these are the components or the required configurations to be done. So as a first step within this lab, I will create a resource group called Application Gateway Demonstration Group, and then I would create a virtual network called Azure Application Gateway Demo VNet. This is what I'm going to create, and within this VNet I'll have two subnets. One subnet for your backend pool. That's where you have the VM1, and also you have the VM2, and also one other dedicated subnet which should be at least minimum as the /27 subnet for your application gateway. So what would happen after creating the virtual machine is I need to create these two VMs. So I'm going to create two VMs, and also I'll do the NSG configuration to allow a port IT. That means I'm going to install on these two virtual machines web applications. That's the IAS I will be installing, and also I'll do a little bit of changes to the IAS so that you know that the request coming from where. Like I'll just add into the paint with the VM01 and VM02 so that you know that this request is coming from VM1 or VM2. And also I'll do on a VM2 part of the VM videos within this IAS, so that if request as an end user, if you try to browse, it directly goes to VM02 with the help of application gateway. That's what we're going to try to do. So by explaining all these, or the high level explanation, let's jump into the actual demo where we are going to create as a first step a resource group. So I'll just give a resource group name as the Azure Application Gateway -demo. That's what I'm going to create. So these are the components that I need to add so that you know that what I'm trying to do with. And you see here, that's the Azure Application Gateway as the resource group I'm going to create. So post to this, I'm going to create I'll just go to the home and create my VNet. So I'll just click on VNet and I'll click on add, and this is where I'm going to create in this application gateway demo. I'll put the VNet name as the Azure Application Gateway -VNet. So I'll just remove the demo and include VNet, and in the easy use region, that's the same place. But here, this is where I need to make sure that give the proper IP subnetting. So I'll just go for 21 subnet this time, turn 21/16 as my address space, and my subnet. This is where, as I said, two subnets to be created. The first one for the backend, other one for the application gateway. So this is the application gateway specific. So I'll just give as the application gateway subnet as /24. And now this is for my backend, so I'll just give as a backend specific naming, and then I'll give the specific subnet information, so that all my VMs will take the IP address of from this subnet. So when I'm creating my virtual machines, I'll make sure that I'll use this as the backend subnet name, and when I'm actually creating my application gateway, I'll use this as my application gateway subnet. That's what I'm going to do it. So make sure that you give the two subnets, and must be the application gateway one /27 minimum. So 24 I gave, and the remaining things are the same, pretty much same things. I'm not gonna configure much here, and I'll just review and create. So this would create a complete VNet. Just created. As a next step, I'm going to create my virtual machines, two virtual machines. As I said earlier, the one like a web-vm01, which I'm going to create. So I'll just go to the virtual machine, click on add, and I'll choose my resource group here as application gateway demo, and I'll give the VM01 as the web-vm01 maybe, and then is yours, and I'll choose as a Windows 2019 server, and the remaining settings are quite similar, and there's no much difference. So I'll just go ahead and give the user ID as Patty and some password, and RDP is a default port. I'm just choosing my licensing part, and then the networking. This is very important. So I'm just actually choosing here the public IP so that I can connect and show you also. And for the subnet, this is very important. As we created VNet, I'm going to actually choose for the backend one. This is the backend subnet which I'm going to choose, because /24 that's a 21.0.0, which I'm going to choose for my application gateway. So that being said, I'll choose as a backend service because I'm going to place this VM into the backend server pool, and remaining settings are pretty much same. And if you want, you can even go for auto shutdown, all that configuration if you want to save. But for this VM, I'm not going to choose anything. I click and create. That's going to create my virtual machine. So in a minute, I'm going to create one more VM called VM02. This has been just done. Now I'm going to create one more VM, very similar settings, but this time I'm going to choose web-vm02. That's only a name difference, and remaining things pretty much same, which I'm going to choose. And I'll choose here this time also 2019 instead of 2012. Oops, so 2019, and then gives the user ID and all of that. So I'll just give sizing Y. It is coming as red. Yeah. Again, Patty as the user ID and the password as the known password, which I normally use. And then licensing, if I really use this, if I have on premises, I can save the cost. And disks default, I'm not going to do anything, but as we talked in the networking, we have to choose the backend subnet, not the application gateway. So I'll just choose the backend subnet, and remaining settings are same. As I said, for the management, if you want auto shutdown, you can configure auto shutdown so that you can save the cost in your lab. That's pretty much same the configuration, and click on review and create. So that's going to create another virtual machine. So what happened is two virtual machines got created. However, we have not added any of the web applications, that's a web server on these virtual machines. So what I'm going to do is I'll just RDP. So I'll just download the RDP file, connect. So I'm going to connect to the VM02 this time. And then later point, I'm going to connect to VM1 also simultaneously. And then I'll install the web application. So let's go to the resource, and then I'll choose from here VM01 and try to connect RDP file. Download the RDP file, try to connect, and once we connected, let me enter here the user ID and the password. And Once the VM is connected, I can straightforward go ahead and from the server manager install add and remove features and then web application. So these are the default things. I'll just open up server manager and click on add roles and feature wizard. Click on next. So if you see here, this is a VM02 and I'll choose web server, which is IIS in this case. So click on next. That's going to install web application. That's a web server. So you have your web services will be running, so you would do the custom settings. I also remove the IE enhanced settings so that I can browse if I really wanted to check the status. So that's what I've done on this virtual machine. Now it's my time to go for VM01. So we have done on the VM02. Similar steps I'm going to do on VM01. So just go to the manage, add roles and features, wizard, and then if you see here VM01 and select the VM01, make sure and just go down and choose a web server. So this is where the IIS service gets installed. So you have the backend, I mean, you can interact with the web services. So think that you are the developer, that's it. So what we are trying to do is just the development side. And also I'll just disable the IE enhanced security for this virtual machine also. So both of them has getting installed the required web services. In fact, Web02, that's the VM02 has been already installed. Now, as a next step, I wanted to do small changes like we did for the NLB or load balancer, what we have done. Similar thing I'm going to do here by opening the web root folder and IIStat. This is where I'm going to put as the VM02, so that in case if I try to browse from the external, I know that this request is coming from the VM02. And I'll just show you the host name also. If you see here, host name is VM02. That's web-vm02. So I'll just give as a VM02. And now this is the VM01. I'll just do the similar changes, but within the initpub, www-root, just go there, initpub and www-root, and edit that in a paint, maybe MS Paint, and just add the VM01. And click on save. That would save. And if I try to browse from internal, I should be getting as the VM01. But if I try to browse from the external, at this point of time, there was no network security group has been created, so I can't browse. So if you see here, this is a VM01. That's why we have added 01. Now, as a next step, we would actually create NSG rule. So that's what we're going to do. But before that, actually, I wanted to make sure that on a VM02, I wanted to create a folder called videos here. I'll give here as a videos, as I said, and then within this, I wanted to give some kind of HTML page, like just not a fancy one because I'm not great HTML developer. But what I'll do is I'll just give this as a video section page or something like that, so that if I try to browse this test.html file, like console.com/videos/test.html example, so I should be able to get a view so similar to this. So I'll just paste this content, and if I just browse this, I'll get this kind of an HTML page. So I just paste it there, like it will show you as this page is completely from a video section page, and this is created by so and so person. Just not a fancy one. Just wanted to show you a draft, very simple HTML file. And now, once we have this, our content is ready on the VM1 and VM02, which is working as a web service. That's good. So later point when we create the application gateway, we will create two backend poles. But as part of the demo, while we are creating the application gateway, we would only create one backend pole. Later point, post to the application gateway configuration, we will create additional poles so that you know how to do it later point also, not just from the wizard based. But for now, I wanted to configure the network security group to allow the configuration to from outside to view. So what I'll do is I'll just take this IP address, and if I try to browse, I don't get it actually because NSG was not configured. So what I'll do is I'll just go to that VM02 networking and then select my NSG, in this case web-VM02-NSG, and inbound security roles. Click on add and add the port destination is 80. In this case, the name also I will stick to 80 and click on add. So now what happened is we created NSG rule and to pass the port 80 traffic for VM02. Similar thing, I'm going to do it for the VM01 also. And later on I'll try to browse and show you. So I'll just go to the networking, NSG, and inbound security rules. Click on add. Simply I'll add the port 80 as an exception so that I can browse it. So let me open the browser and quickly and show you these two VMs IP address I have just copy pasted in my memory and simply browse it. So I got the VM01 here, and I'll also try to do it from the another browser, maybe here VM02. So both are I'm able to browse it. That's good. So now we know that we have working virtual machine 1 and virtual machine 2. So it's time for us to do the actual application gateway configuration. To do that, what I'll do is I'll just search for the Microsoft Azure. In the search under services, you can see here application gateway. So I'll just choose the application gateway by typing application gateway and then click on add. So this is where it's going to ask us to choose what kind of resource group you want to use. So definitely I wanted to use the same resource group which I have been using for this demo. That's called Azure Application Gateway Demo. And application gateway name, this is the name of your application gateway to identify. You might have more than one, right? So just to identify, so I'm gonna choose this as the app gateway multipath demo, and I'll stick to region as ECUs, and this is very important here by selecting the tides. So if you select the V2 and you got the autoscaling option, that's the tile specific one, and if you choose the standard you don't get the autoscaling. If you just go to this link which is given within this tile specific one and go back to this section, that's a feature comparison between SKU for version 1 and version 2, you can see here if you're just choosing the version 2, you are able to get the autoscaling option, zone redundancy. So you will be getting the static virtual IP for your application gateway, and also you can go for Ingress control of your AKs, that's the Azure Kubernetes services, and also you can integrate with Azure Key Vault services, and you can rewrite the HTTPS header information. And also apart from this, you can just go through this table when you have a time, but you also get the other benefit of custom rules can be created with the help of Windows Application Firewall, or the Web Application Firewall. Web Application Firewall, or WAF we call it. So WAF will give you the custom rules if you choose the standard 2. So I'll just choose the standard 2, and when I choose the standard 2, I can by default in the backend it actually configures, or it will give you the provision of configuring the WAF v2 configuration. In fact, once we created this web application specific this application gateway, once we created this, we will actually create the WAP firewall rules also, custom rules also, in a minute or so. But for now I'll choose the standard v2. And you see here you have the auto scaling, so I'll just give 1 or 2 here, the scale units, it doesn't matter for me. This is demo, so I'll just choose 1, maybe scaling up to 10. And you see here HTTP 2 option, if you want to you can choose that, and you have the zone redundancy like zone 1, zone 2, zone 3. So I'll choose here my zoning configuration also, and simply I'll choose the available zone configuration. If you just go through this, these are the available regions and zones, and if you just go through these articles, it gives you more information about the SLAs and the Azure region specific. Certain regions are become as a zone, so you have the full fledged replication, and you have the high availability. And HTTP 2 is the other level of support. By default it is disabled. If you want, you can go ahead and enable this protocol. And this is very important. If you see here the virtual network which I need to choose, if at all I have not created earlier my virtual network, that's my VNet, I should be able to do it from here also. In my case, I've already created, that's what we have done. So I'll just choose the Azure Application Gateway -VNet. That's what we have done earlier. So I'll choose that, and you see here the subnets. So coming back to the subnets, you have the two subnets. If I just drill down here, I have the two subnets. Let me just go down. Oops, it's not showing properly. But if you see here application gateway, and if I just go a little bit scrolling down, you have the backend subnet also. So in my case, I must have to choose the application gateway subnet instead of the backend server subnet, because backend server subnet is dedicated for your backend pools. That's what we have designed as per the design configuration. So now I'll choose the application gateway subnet and I'll go for the front end. So in the front end, okay, I'm still here the subnet, so I'll just go back here. I don't want to create, so I don't want to manage. If I just go ahead and manage, I'll get that options to create your own custom subnets if at all you have not done. So make sure that it should follow minimum as /27 and backend. So in the backend, if you see here, actually what happens is the key is here. The configuration is a key. So this configuration requires front-end configuration to be done as well as the back-end configuration. Then in the configuration you will have a rules. So within these rules you can say that if anything coming from the videos, you can say that hey, it should send the traffic to the back-end pools. That's how you're gonna configure. So we have not gone through these steps, so I treat this as a step 1 and step 2, and this is the step 3, which is a key, because step 3 is depends on your step 1 and step 2. So that being said, let's configure the front end. So what is your front end? Front end will be your application gateway's front end IP address. That IP can be later point. You can register with your DNS services to a specific FQDN name, but in our case we are not going to do all that, but we would simply configure a public IP so we can browse with a public IP. As you see here, I also told that these are the key things which needs to be configured as part of the application gateway configuration, and we did even discuss this in the overview section. So the first one is front end. So in the front end, I'm going to choose a public IP. So since I have taken as the standard 2, that means it's going to be a permanent VIP, which is going to be. So I'll just click on add and create a VIP. That's a virtual IP. So I'll just give here as my public IP name, just the application gateway, maybe a VIP. Click OK. That's going to create the virtual IP. And coming back to the that's a front end, right? That's what we have done. Now front end is just done. Now the backend is needed. So what's the backend? Backend, you have your virtual servers or the VMs will be there as a pool. Let's say you can have default pool. That's if anybody is browsing as a contestore.com, it just goes to the pool of default. And if somebody is browsing slash videos, that would goes to some other pool which is dedicated for the videos. That's how we can configure it. So let's click on add pool. So I'm just configuring because I wanted to later point configure this entire setup once we have done the application gateway creation. So what I will be doing is here I'll just give as a temporary as the backend pool for videos, and later point we would discuss more further because we didn't talk about the listeners and all that topic yet. So we're going to do all that configuration. So here just for the namesake, I'm just entering here the required details. I'm not accurately giving. So here you have an option for the backend pools, like you can configure for your web applications like web services, and you can go for your VM scale sets and your virtual machines and other public IP address or maybe IP address or FQDNs also can be given as a target for this backend pool. So in my case, it's a VMs actually. So I'm going to give here as the maybe just for the routing purpose, I'm going to give here default. And here the backend pool without targets. I don't want to go for fancy one now. I will come back later point and I'll do that configuration. So this is a very important one. So what we have done, front end we configured, this is what we have done as the public IP. And for the backends, this is what we have done here. So within this, we gave the default without any VMs. And now it's time for us to configure the routing path. So what happens is, this is where you will say that /videos or whatever that it will go. Or maybe for contoso.com, it goes to a specific backend pool. If contoso1.com or contoso2.com or contoso3.com, so these are the three different domain names, right? So in that case, it just points to a different backend pools. So that kind of configuration you can configure under routing rules. So I'm gonna do this routing. So as I said, I have done the front end and the backend pools, all that. Now it's time for us to do the routing rule. So click on the add routing rule, and this is where it will ask for the listener configuration and also backend targets. So here two important things like we are trying to do. One would be the listener specific and the backend targets. So it's time for us to do the rule name. So let's say if this rule is dedicated for multipath, so I'll just give that name and then the listener name and front-end IP address, which is my this is IP, right? What we have created as part of the front end. That's what we will be giving. And the protocol, if it is HTTP, HTTPS. If it is HTTPS, you need to upload your certificate, and the port based on that, actually HTTP or HTTPS port based on that. And listener type is a basic or multi-site. When I say multi-site, so the listener, this is very important. Like listener says that if it is a contoso.com, it's going to be static. So simple, contoso.com is a single domain name. But what if you have maybe different domains altogether, like contoso.com 1, contoso.com 2.com, contoso3.com, contoso4.com, or maybe in other way, just to just for the example, xyz.com, abc.com, or maybe 123.com. So these are the three different domains. What if you wanted to map to different pools in backend pools? Then you would be choosing the multi-site actually. So in our case, we are not trying with a multi-site, but we are trying with only single one. So that's the configuration that needs to be done. So if I just without proceeding further, it will give the error. Okay, so I'll just give here as a default multipath specific one, like videos path specific as a rule name, and I'm just giving here listener name as a demo example, but it has to be actually HTTP. Later point we will change if really needed, and or we can just give here demo-HTTP, and it's going to be basic. And if it is a HTTPS setting, so here the path which is backend, we are into the backend targets. So within this backend targets, I need to choose my specific configuration like HTTPS settings. This is HTTP settings without space, and then backend port is 80, and then cookie based affinity. So if we want a session based affinity, you can configure here under HTTPS settings, and also connection draining, you can configure all that here. So in our case, connection draining is not enabled, which will definitely help to a specific let's say within your backend pools, some of the servers are meant for the maintenance window, let's say for Windows updates or some kind of updates, then the traffic doesn't go to those machines. So that's called a draining facility you have within Microsoft Azure for application gateway configuration, especially from the HTTPS settings. And the timeout 20 seconds override path. So this is the critical path which we are going to give. So here I will be giving here as the path / let's say videos kind of path can be given here. So that's what I can give here, the multiple path I can configure. Let's say backend pool for videos / star. So anything if you try to do videos / it will go for VM02 as a target name. So HTTPS setting backend is the default. So we didn't configure proper backends here. Like as we talked in the beginning, we need to configure two things: one for the videos, other one for the default. So as of now, it's just given as a default, but we can click on add and create from here, or we can do it later point also. So I'll be creating from the later point. So I'll just go ahead and do all these for now just to show you for the creation part. Later point it would becomes easy for us. So let's click on tags, review and create. So this is going to create application gateway. Once the application gateway is created, we will go ahead and configure the required settings for application gateway. Let's click on application gateway and go back to the configuration that we wanted to configure. So in this case, this is the application gateway. This is how it looks, very similar to your Azure load balancer specific configuration, but there are few things are different. So if you see here, the first thing, configuration, this is where you can do the auto scaling. You can go for auto scale from anywhere based on your configuration. That's what you can choose. So I'm not gonna configure anything here. And also on top of here, you can choose the WAF v2 or standard based configuration. And this is where the application firewall configurations can be done, which we are going to do in a minute or so, or maybe end of this lecture. For now, I'll just go back to HTTP settings and listener and the rules. That's what we wanted to focus. So the first thing is the listeners. So listeners, that's what we have created. If you remember, when we added demo HTTP for HTTP protocol, this is a front end. So and the associated rule is videos path. So if you can capture, the listener is associated with some kind of a rule which is coming here. So video path. And also HTTPS settings, if I just go back here, within this you have an option for cookie, that's a session based affinity and connection draining. All that can be configured here, and you can override some kind of path also, or HTTP redirection. All that can be done here. So now I'll just go back to my backend pools and I'll create two pools. So earlier we created as a default for video purpose, but we didn't add any VMs. So what I'll do is, so I'll just rename this as the let's see, what is this? This is a default. So I'll just go for here and say this is for my virtual machine. So as we talked earlier, or in the introduction of this lecture also, or even the overview lecture, we talked about this can be configured, the paths can be configured for virtual machine scale set or web applications, or for VMs, or even for your IP address. So in this case I'm choosing virtual machine, and I'll get all the VMs that I have here. So I wanted this specific one, that's a default one, should go to VM01, and even the path also configured wrong, because my path should go to normal path. So the default path like contest.com, not for / video path. So I'll later point I'll change this. For now I'll just choose here VM01, that's a VM01, and I'll save. So that's going to save, and I'll create another one. This is for only videos. So here backend pool, add a backend pool without targets. No, I just want to add even add the backend pools, wanted to add even the path. So I'll just choose here as a VM02. So in this case VM02 was created now successfully. So it takes a minute or so. So now we created two backend pools, one for the default, other one for the route based. So it might take a minute. Now it has been just created, if you see here, and if it just its other one is still in the progress, just click on refresh, so I can see here. So under videos I can associate the specific configuration later point, but for now videos has been created. Now I'll just go to the rules. So instead of the video path, in the video path what we have associated is the backend as a default. So I'll just change this to backend targets. I'll just change this to VM2 is fine, that's fine. And instead of the target I'll just choose as a videos. So backend target is the pool which we have targeted, videos, and the path also going to the videos. So what would happen is, if HTTPS listener is coming with on HTTPS, that's what this is what here we configured on a port 80. So if a request comes, it will forward to videos pool. Videos pool is nothing but VM02 in the pool, and that is also if the condition is / videos only. That's how we configured. So click on save. That would take a minute or so to configure this also. And now if I just go back to my backend pools, I can recheck the configuration of what we have done. The configuration has been saved. Let's go back to the backend pools. Earlier, if you remember, there was path was not there, but if I just go to the default, so now I should be able to see here just for the VM01, that's the 01. If you see here VM01, now backend target also 1, and if I just go to videos, this is for VM02, which is good. And also let's go to HTTP settings, and if the request is on a port IT, I'm not configuring here anything like session based affinity or connection draining options. I'm also not done any kind of host overriding options, the header information host override. And front end, we talked about the public, and the private was not configured. So the front end is nothing but the IP address that was configured for your appliance. That's the application gateway appliance. So if somebody is try to reach here, let's say that goes to VM02, the reason being within this video path you have an option for backend target as a video. So videos pool is actually targeted. So instead of that, if you actually target to default, that's what we have done earlier. If you remember the backend pool, we created the default as well as the videos. The intention for the video should go only if it is coming as the videos / anything, right? So that's what we have done. So just click on the default, and if it is saved, and if I try to again browse within this the same IP address, if I just go and browse it, it should actually go to the VM1. So I'll just close in a private tab, and I'll try to browse this. So I should get it as a VM01. So that's a cache earlier. So it's actually working fine, right? The VM2, it's going properly. Now it's time for us to actually browse. If you remember the path, what we have done is within this virtual machine, that's VM02, we talked about try to browse this path. So how we have done is within this VM, if you try to browse with the local host for VM02, like videos / HTML, that's a page which we created manually. So it should actually go to VM02 or VM02. So now currently it is going to the VM01. So what happens is with the multi-route path, if I just go here, it should actually go to VM02. The reason being it's not going is if I just go to the videos path, and in the backend pools, inside your videos, the path was configured to backend pool as a default. We should configure this to actually videos, so that it actually goes, because the path is the videos. So I'll just click on here and take this to backend server as the videos, because if you remember the backend, videos will point to that specific URL, and click on save. That would actually save the configuration. So this might take a minute or so for the configuration. Once the configuration is saved, the specific setting, I should be able to browse. Now the configuration is successfully saved and I'm able to browse. So this page is actually coming from VM02, not from the VM. So if I just go here, this will come from VM1. However, if I just put as my videos-test, it's actually coming from VM02. That's how it's going to work. So this is quite useful when you're trying for multiple sites or multiple domains with single application gateway to route with different route paths. You can use this, or a specific content should be coming from a different backend pools. This will be very useful in terms of configuring. let's also talk about other configurations which is available within the application gateway. Let's say if you look at the web application firewall, this is where you can configure your WAF specific configuration. So like you can go for the standard v2 or you can upgrade to WAF v2. So when you configure WAF v2, you get all the advantages that comes from this rules actually. So you have different rules which are enabled. If you see here, if you configure that WAF v2, you have an options, for example, attacking on based on the PHP code or maybe SQL injection. If I just expand this, you get the advantage of automated prevention, automated finding or automated threat defense mechanism. Automatically you can get it with the help of WAF. Also you can create your custom rules also when you have this configuration from the directly from the WAF. So here you can see here SQL injection, all that can be enabled, and simply you can save the configuration if at all you wanted to configure. That's WAF v2 specific, and also standard, also just the standard rules will be available. However, when you go for here, you need to choose the rule set and all that configuration. So in our case, we don't have anything, but if you just go to WAF v2, I should be able to actually choose the default Microsoft given WAF specific configurations I can choose, and I can apply those specific configurations. Let's say if I don't want maybe SQL injection attack, common injection testing detection, I simply take it out, or if I want, I can enable that. So these all are specific to the web application firewall rules. So because this application gateway works for the application web application, so it would definitely require you to configure so that you can secure your entire backend pools. And also if you just go back to the configuration, you have an options where you can actually put your firewall mode into detection or maybe in a prevention mode. So in our case, I'm actually putting into the prevention. That would actually applies all these rules. But if I put into the detection mode, it's gonna just log all that whatever it is happening against to those rules. And apart from that, you can also put anywhere the value from request body size anywhere from 8 to 128 kilobytes. So I'll just give here as 8 for now, for 8 kilobytes. Also for the upload limit also you can configure here, so I'm just giving as 8. So this is about the web application firewall settings. So we talked in the beginning of this lecture for the demo purpose. We talked about the backend pools. We created default and videos. For the videos, the / video test, whatever this is coming, that will point to the videos. And the default, if anybody is browsing from here, just the main URL, so it's gonna go for the default path. And HTTP settings, we talked about it, and this is on a port 80, so you can have only one HTTP in this case setting, and that's on specific port 80. You cannot have one more on the same port for the same thing. And also for the front-end IP, we talked about the public IP, and also you can configure even for the private. When you're trying to create the application gateway, you have an option for the both, either public and private. In our case, we have chosen as a public. And listeners, we talked about the listeners where the path, how it has to go for on what port. So the port is IT. It should listen on a routing path which was associated as the videos path. And also for the rules, this is where we created a video path specific rule. Like by default it goes to the demo HTTP listener, but when it comes to the landing page of the normal page, it goes to the default pool as the backend. But if somebody is trying to browse for the videos, it will go to the backend pool for videos. That's how we have given. And rewrites we have not configured. If you want HTML header information to be rewrite, you can configure that. And health probes, by default it creates. If you want to create custom health probes, you can create the custom health probes, and this is just the properties. And apart from this monitoring section, you have all alerts and metrics, very similar the way you have for other any Azure resources. Similar things you can configure here for the metrics and logs and diagnostic settings. And also backend health, you can check out whether your backend health pool is really healthy or not. You can find out from here. And you can also do the connection troubleshoot for your configuration if you have any issues. So in our case, the health of the backend is healthy, and if I stop any of these service, I will actually get here as the unhealthy. And the connection troubleshoot also, which will be useful for troubleshooting further on testing of your application gateway configuration settings. And this is where you will raise the ticket and other information for further support with Microsoft. So I hope this entire lecture is useful for you. Thank you for watching this. Please stay for next lecture, and we'll catch you in that lecture. Thank you.